You got your Mega Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. We're ready to talk about the Commanders and Eagles on Monday Night Football. Joining us, he's trying to get into work, I guess. He's in the car making good time. He's supposed to be on the air down there at 9 o'clock in D.C. From the team, 980 AM reporter and host Chris Russell joins us. You're cutting a little close there, Russell.
Good morning, guys. There's nothing like a good standard hour and a half Monday morning commute to start off the week. I mean, for God's sakes, I hope you guys in Philly have a lot less to deal with than we do around here. Man, I'm telling you, nobody can drive up here.
Yeah, the Beltway's not known for its traffic. Come on, Chris. Not at all.
How are you guys? Good morning. Sorry I'm running a little bit late, but better late than never, huh?
Exactly.
Not good to see you, Chris. By the way, I saw you got a shout out from Kirk Cousins the other week. That was nice.
So a quick story behind that. Kirk and I obviously I covered him, from the time he got here in 2012 as a disgruntled rookie because he was stuck behind Robert Griffin III, right? If you guys remember that. And, obviously we developed a good relationship over many years. And, I've stayed in touch while he's been in Minnesota. I haven't seen him in 5 years because I don't travel anymore. So they had played them back in, I think, 2019 in Minnesota. And, I missed that game, but, we stayed in touch and whatever. And so we got to meet up before the game, in the tunnel. And then after the game, I just happened to be there and he shouted me out. So I appreciate that. That's very kind of him. Guys, I'll tell you what, he may not be the best Monday night quarterback. He may not be the best playoff quarterback, but he's a hell of a quarterback, man. And he's the best quarterback that this Washington franchise has had in 30 years, which is part of the reason why they're an absolute mess still.
All right, well, then let's talk about the guy who will quarterback them on Monday night. I don't know, is Taylor Heinicke a good Monday night quarterback, a better primetime quarterback than Kirk Cousins? He did add a little juice replacing our former buddy Carson Wentz, but he threw a real bad pick last week. That was a game the Commanders couldn't let slip out of their hands against Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Twins. He seems to have the teams rallying behind him. But does he have enough talent to be a continuous starting quarterback in the National Football League?
Yeah, that's the problem, Jody. I think the shelf life is so limited and almost helter-skelter, like at times last week, you mentioned that bad interception, and make no mistake about it, it was a terrible overthrow at Harrison Smith in on your half of the field, right? And then they allow a 35-yard return, which was a killer too. But that's just, a shorter guy with not great arm strength, just ripping it too much without touch. And we all know, right? I mean, you guys have been around this game for a long, long, long time, that maybe when you don't have great arm strength or great size, and he had gotten a couple of balls knocked down in that game, and that's something certainly the Philadelphia Eagles can look at tonight, facing him, because remember, you guys didn't face him not only earlier in week 3, but also in that late season game last year because he was out with COVID. That was Garrett Gilbert. So I'm trying to remember he would have played in the first game last year against Philadelphia. But, that's the thing with Heinicke. Like, he was pretty good in the third quarter last week after sucking for the entire first half. And then he was dreadful again in the fourth quarter. And so you never really know what you're going to get, which I suppose is the same for most quarterbacks. But he's definitely more up and down, yo-yo like. And he's almost, I don't want to say he's good for at least one turnover a game, but he's pretty much good for at least one boneheaded, terrible throw a game. And if you guys can be in the right spot, meaning the Eagles, then especially with the secondary that Howie Roseman has put together, my goodness, it's going to be probably lights out. We all know how good the Eagles are in terms of turnover margin, takeaways. And again, you have a quarterback that's apt to make a throw that, certainly you should not make, all things considered, and maybe more than one. So if they're in the really right position, it could be 2 or 3.
I would think the biggest boneheaded throw was the triple coverage throw that turned into 7 points for Washington. So if you had the back judge wiping out the center fielder, that's a great play to have in your playbook, Chris. But,
no, you're right, John. I mean, I mean that should have been an interception or at least a knockdown. Kevin O'Connell, when I talked to him after the game last week, the Vikings head coach, who was the former offensive coordinator here, he was obviously a little bit salty about that, and as he should have been. I don't know. I don't know if you're going to see that scenario again tonight.
I don't know if you can count on that.
Right, with Darius Slay and James Bradbury and Chancey Gardner-Johnson, even though Avonte Maddox is out, there's a more than good chance that Taylor Heinicke is going to throw. Some guys around here call them YOLO balls. You only live once balls. Yeah. I don't know if I call them that. I just call it a not great quarterback ball. And I mean, listen, even the greats make mistakes. We all understand that, but when you're not great, which certainly you would not describe Taylor Heinicke as under any circumstances, and you make those kind of decisions, it's hard to dig yourself out of it. Kirk Cousins made some terrible throws yesterday, dug himself out of it with some big-time throws. Aaron Rodgers, same thing. Tom Brady, same thing. Well, guess what? Taylor Heinicke really and usually can't do that, especially against the Birds secondary. At least that's the way I see it.
All right, Chris, if you've been a member of this football team for the last year and change, you go further back, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. There's always something in addition to football that you have to deal with, something going on with the organization. It has never even reached this high a point before with everything that's going on and the potential sale of the team. It comes down to the coach being able to keep the team insulated and just focused on football. Easier said than done at times, and I would think this would be one of those times. Or is it? Has the head coach been able to keep this team in that cocoon you need to be when other things around the organization are going as haywire as they are?
Yeah, Jody Mack, I think I think Ron Rivera's done as good of a job as you can, all things considered. One thing that has hurt him is he's been gone. Let me see, 2 out of the last 3 weeks for a couple of days because, unfortunately, he went back to see his mom on the West Coast before she passed away, and then his mom passed away last Monday. Was it last Monday night? Like right around there. So he missed, no, actually, I'm sorry. It was the week of leading up to the Vikings game, and then he went away last Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday when they had the extra day to prepare for the Eagles. So he wasn't really there, during that. And as part of that, some of this just never-ending controversy again reared its ugly head from the Dan Snyder sale, which actually, if it goes through, has been a positive thing. Yeah. But the attorney generals, all the crazy ass statements, using Brian Robinson Jr., the rookie Commanders running back, as basically a stage prop and a statement to show how bad the police department is and to how everybody's against the Commanders. That rang true and ripped home in that locker room as much as anything, and more than anything probably, because people did not appreciate how an external lawyer and spokesman used that situation, their teammate, their brother, as a means to kind of defend the organization, if you will. So I think Ron has done an admirable job, but to say that this team is not affected by it, to say that they're not thinking about it, questioned about it all the time, that's absurd. That's crazy. You can't keep that stuff completely out of the locker room. You can't keep it completely out of your lives. We all live in a social media world, right? We all go home and we get questions about what we do and what happened and why this and why that from people that care, people that are passionate, people that want to know, right? Because we're supposedly on the inside. Well, imagine you're a player for this team and you're like, are you going to sell? Is Jeff Bezos buying the team? Is Jay-Z buying the team? Is Dan Snyder getting arrested? All of these things, you're constantly dealing with it from your wife, your girlfriend, your kids, your boys, your brother, whatever it might be. It's impossible to shut it out. Impossible.
Yeah, and poor Ron Rivera is coming home from his mother's funeral, and he's texting apologies to his players.
Right, exactly.
So that's a bad situation to be.
And Ron, just aside on Ron, I mean, he obviously coached in Philly at one point under Andy, right? So,
Yeah.
Philly fans, still probably sort of remember Ron, other than just him being an NFL head coach. He is, guys, he's as noble of a dude as you're going to get in this profession, especially at that level, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's not perfect. No, nobody would say that he's perfect, and he's flawed as a football coach. There is no doubt about that. But he's as noble of a man as you can. There is nobody. And I mean, I've covered Mike Shanahan, Jim Zorn, Jay Gruden. I've been around the league, as you guys know, we cover more than just one team in a lot of cases. And when you do the national stuff and all that, and whatever, like you have a feel for the league.
Yeah.
There is nobody, no coach ever in the history of the NFL that has had to deal with Ron Rivera has had to deal with in his first 2.5 years on the job here in Washington. Nobody. And that includes Mike Shanahan, who went through the absolute meat grinder here in Washington as well with Donovan McNabb, as you guys well know, and Albert Hainsworth and Robert Griffin III and Dan Snyder and Bruce Allen and controversy after controversy. Mike, that was hors d'oeuvres. This has been a 7-course dinner, for Ron Rivera, and I feel bad for the guy. I really do.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. It's such a difficult situation. I think Ron has handled it very, very well. But with the game tonight, I do want to shift back on the field, Chris. The one issue that I think the Eagles might have, because I got to watch that game last week because the Eagles played on Thursday night. Boy, I was impressed by that Washington front. So 2 questions. What the heck is going on with Chase Young? Number one, is he going to be able to play tonight? And secondly, how good has Jonathan Allen been this year? I mean, that was a pretty good guard, Ezra Cleveland. He got the Blutarski from Pro Football Focus, 0.0 pass protection against Jonathan Allen. Yeah. And that's a pretty good player.
Yeah. I mean, Jonathan Allen is an absolute man-child. Like, he doesn't get the same amount of credit that an Aaron Donald gets, and I'm not saying he's Aaron Donald, but he's, the last year and a half, he's really elevated into the premier two-way player that they were hoping he would be, out of Alabama. When, remember, guys, he was expected to be a top 3 overall pick and dropped to number 17 because there were concerns about his arthritic shoulder. That hadn't been a problem really at all. I mean, he's missed a couple of games here and there, missed a couple of games in his missed maybe about 2/3 of his rookie season back in 2017 because of a Liz Frank foot injury, but the shoulder hasn't been an issue at all. And again, the last year and a half, he's really, really, really come on as a dominant interior pass rusher. But he's good against the run as well. He's good at snuffing out screens, as you may have seen, John, on the second series first play last week against, I think it was against Dalvin Cook, if memory serves me correct. Just blew that one up. But the bottom line is I mean, he's really developed. And Deron Payne, in a walk year, has had a monster consistent year. Yeah, he's paired next to him, right? Deron Payne has always shown flashes of talent, but he's never been consistent like he has been so far this year. Now, maybe that's the money talking. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But, man, has he really elevated his game. Montez Sweat as well. He had a rough year last year with injuries, personal tragedy, COVID, all of that stuff. And he's bounced back after a slow start sack-wise. He was getting pressure and hits and all that stuff. So that defensive line, really, really, really good. They've done a good job stopping the run. The only time when people have been able to really crease them is, quite honestly, missed tackles, and that really hasn't come against that defensive line. That's more at the linebacker level and so on. As far as Chase Young goes, guys, as far as I understand, I believe with the roster elevation that he would need, that deadline has passed at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and they obviously did not make that. They were not expecting him to play as the week went along. Originally, he was supposed to play, and something, I want to call it a setback. They're very they're very against that word, but clearly they backed him off when they had to go inside and practice inside at their team facility on field turf. We all know what the buzz has been about around the league about that. So they backed him off tonight, when again he was supposed to return, his 1 year to the day that he suffered the original injury against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Now, it wasn't just your normal standard garden variety torn ACL. It was a torn ACL. It was a torn patella. They had to do grafting from the other leg. So, I mean, he's had a bunch going on. But, yeah, they haven't had him for a year. And barring something I'm not aware of, guys, I don't expect that to change this week. And, they're running out of time to make a decision on him. They've only got about, I think, 9 more days after today to make a decision. I assume he'll be activated for either this Sunday in Houston or the next Sunday after that against Atlanta, but doesn't look like he's going to be a part of tonight's game.
Fair enough. All right, last thing, Chris, and we'll let you get in and start the show. Yeah, and it's a good thing for those two studly defensive tackles. They haven't tried to punch each other on the sideline at all this year, which is a major plus. One major, no questions asked. It looks like Cole Holcomb's going to be out of the lineup tonight. They're probably top linebacker. How big a difference is it with him off the field and on the field for them? Both John and I are giving credit to their D-line, but that oftentimes opens things up for linebackers to make plays. If you don't have your best linebacker there to make the play, how does it really benefit your defense? How much will this team miss Holcomb tonight being out of the lineup?
Yeah, they've struggled at the linebacker spot, which is kind of weird, being that both Del Rio, the defensive coordinator, and Rivera, former NFL linebackers. But they've struggled there. There's no doubt about it. Cole Holcomb was the guy that they chose to be their Mike. This year, after things did not work out last year for a variety of reasons with Jamin Davis, the first-round pick last year from Kentucky, and John Bostic, and you'll see both of those guys play tonight because David Mayo, their other Mike linebacker, not David Mustard. No. You got to hold the Mustard. Hold the Mayo, apparently. He's out again tonight. So they're really short two Mike linebackers, if you will. But Jamin Davis has really come on strong. He is a super athletic freak, sideline to sideline, tough, physical, fast, all that. Getting better in pass coverage. If I'm the Eagles, I would still very much test him out on wheel routes, on option routes, that type of thing. Does miss a tackle here and there, but he's primarily been their main linebacker because what they do, guys, is play a lot of 5 defensive linemen, play a lot of nickel personnel in the backfield, which most teams do anyway. And then what they'll do is they call it their Buffalo nickel package. They'll play, instead of 3 corners, 2 safeties, they'll play 3 safeties, 2 corners, and drop like Cameron Curl down into and towards the line of scrimmage and basically act as if he's like a second linebacker. So that's how they compensate for that. Guys, if I were, from an Eagles perspective, I would, and they did this in week 3, I was there, they attacked Kendall Fuller, obviously with DeVonta Smith, and Benjamin St. Juste is a second-year corner, 6'2", 215, 20-pound corner who had his breakout game against the Eagles in week 3 at FedEx.
Yeah.
4 pass breakups on 3rd down, right? But then A.J. Brown beat him on a slant for a 9-yard touchdown. I would expect, this is me, Benjamin St. Juste to be more on DeVonta Smith, even though, it's a jitterbug versus a bigger type body matchup, because I don't think they think Kendall Fuller can cover DeVonta Smith even in zone and stay with him, which he couldn't do. And even on 50-50 balls, if you remember that throw at
the halftime,
he outjumped him, right? A smaller guy versus a bigger guy. So I think you'll probably see a little bit of a flip in that regard, with St. Juste maybe more drawing DeVonta Smith at least early, and maybe Kendall Fuller, who is kind of a bigger body, but not a big body against A.J. Brown. That's at least the way I would try it if I was the Commanders, and try and see if that yields better results tonight. So that's the area that I still worry about, besides all the stuff on offense and Taylor Heinicke and the offensive line. And I mean, they've got, their left guard might be out, Andrew Norwell. Their center, they might be on their 4th center tonight. We'll see how that plays out. They haven't been able to run the ball. They haven't been able to convert on 3rd down. All of that aside, offense is clearly their biggest issue. But on the defensive side, trying to slow down Hurts and the Eagles, they did a pretty good job stopping the run. But that area that I just talked about is an area that, look, I mean, I think the Eagles are probably going to be able to have some success with tonight.
Chris, great stuff. No, you got to get inside. Ocho Show. Thank you for fighting the traffic and jumping on with us. I think we heard everything we needed to hear from you. Thanks, buddy. We will do it again down the road.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Thanks, Chris.